Hello everyone and welcome to tutorial number 32 in a series of video tutorials for Java programming. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload on my channel. So in the last tutorial I discussed about exception handling. Okay, so I gave the introduction to what the concept of exception is in Java. Then after that we discussed about try catch block, finally block, types of exceptions, throw keywords, throws keywords, etc. So in this tutorial, we are going to, continue from where we left in the last tutorial. So I'm going to talk about built-in and custom exceptions. Built-in exceptions are those exceptions which are already defined in the Java programming language, and custom exceptions are those exceptions, which can be, you know, uh, which can be defined by the programmer. That is, which can be defined by you yourself. Okay. So any programmer can define a custom exception, whosoever is using the Java programming language. So these are called as custom exceptions. So let's get started. So first of all, as I said in the previous tutorial itself, there are two types of exceptions. One is checked exceptions and another one is unchecked exceptions. All right. So if you don't know what these concepts are, watch the last tutorial, which is tutorial number 31. So, in this tutorial, I'm going to talk about these, built-in unchecked exceptions and built-in checked exceptions. So, first of all, let us talk about built-in unchecked exceptions. So, all these exceptions, okay, these seven exceptions, they are already defined in the Java programming language. Now, this arithmetic exception, we have discussed this exceptions, a lot of times earlier. Whenever you're dividing by zero, okay, or you're performing an illegal arithmetic operation, then it is going to throw an arithmetic exception. Okay. So there are other possibilities also which can throw this error, exception, but right now we are considering only division by zero. All right. Then second thing is array index out of bounds exception. Now this exception also I have already showed you, in the previous tutorial when I used the IDE. I already showed you this array index out of bounds exception. Okay, so whenever you try to use the array index which is out of the size of the array, like for example the size of the array is 40 or 40, okay, and you're trying to access the array index 40 or 41, then it is out of bounds because array index always ranges from 0 to 39. Okay, if in this particular case I'm saying, okay, so if the size of the array is 40, then the array index will range only from 0 to 39. So array index 40 or array index 41 is invalid. Okay, so in that case it is going to throw this particular exception. Then third one is class cast exception. Okay, this exception also I already showed you. Okay, if you remember, if you remember, then you will remember that I also showed you this exception in one of my previous tutorial when I used the IDE. Okay, so when you're trying to cast from one type to another type, and it is not supported by Java or it is invalid, then it is going to throw invalid cast. Okay, so then it is going to throw this exception, class cast exception. Okay, then we have illegal argument exception. Now this thing we have not discussed, okay, earlier, so this thing we'll be discussing later on, but actually this is a completely different concept. Okay, like whenever we are going to call a method by reflection. Now in Java, there is a concept which is known as reflection. Java.lang.reflect package is there, so we can call method using reflect, the concept of reflection as well. So if you try to call the method by reflection, and if you're supplying an illegal argument to that particular method which you are trying to call using the reflection, then it is going to throw this particular exception. All right, so this is a little bit of an advanced concept, so I think we will not go into depth right now. Now we have the negative array size exception. Okay, so if you're trying to define an array with a negative size, like for example, I am defining an array, okay, and I am giving it a size of minus 25 or minus 40 or minus 100, then it is going to cause negative array size exception. So this thing I will be showing you, when I will be using the IDE. All right. The null pointer exception, if you remember, I have showed you this particular thing as well. Okay, so whenever you're trying to use a null reference, then it is going to throw a null pointer exception. But nevertheless, I will, repeat this particular exception in the future tutorial when I will be using the IDE. I will be showing you, how this particular exception is thrown. Okay, so if you, try to use a null reference, and if you try to access a particular method or a particular variable of a null reference, then it is going to cause a null pointer exception. All right, so that is what null pointer exception is all about. Then after that, number format exception, that this exception is thrown whenever we are trying to convert, a string to a particular number. Okay, and the particular string, it is not in the number format. Like for example, I am trying to convert, let us say, we have YouTube. Okay, so the name of the, we are storing YouTube in the string, and we are trying to convert that YouTube to a number. Then that is not possible, right? Because YouTube is, it is not a number, it is a string actually. Then it is going to throw number format exception. Okay, so these things will be more clear when I use the IDE. Okay, and don't think that there are only 7 exceptions. Okay, actually the list is vast. Okay, I cannot discuss each and every method in this particular tutorial, or even in my tutorial series. Okay, you have to research more from your side as well. Okay, so these are 7 or 8 exceptions which I showed you, and these are unchecked. Unchecked means you don't need to necessarily catch these exceptions, or you don't need to necessarily handle these exceptions. Okay, the compiler, it is automatically going to handle it. Like, but one thing you need to keep in mind is that whenever these exceptions are encountered, okay, the program, it is going to terminate if you don't use try catch. All right, the next thing is built-in checked exceptions. So these are around 5 or 6 exceptions. Okay, and this is also not a complete list. As I said earlier, this is not a complete list. Okay, there are more exceptions apart from these. So class not found exception. Okay, so this particular exception is thrown by this particular method class dot for name. Okay, so we have a class which is in Java, which is itself named as class, but C is capitalized. Okay, and there is a static method in this class which is named as for name, and this is accepting a parameter, okay, which is a string type, and the string has to be the name of a class. So if you write any invalid class name here, or if you try to enter a class name which does not exist, then it is going to throw class not found exception. All right, then clone not supported exception. So okay, this thing also I showed you earlier itself. Okay, so uh, whenever a class, it is not implementing the clonable interface. Okay, there is an interface named as clonable in Java, and if your particular class, it is not implementing that particular interface, but it is trying to override the clone method of the object class, then it is going to throw this particular exception. Okay, clone not supported exception. Then after that, we have interrupted exception. Okay, so this particular interrupted exception, this thing will be more clear when we, study the concept of threads. So this particular exception, it is thrown when one thread, it is trying to interrupt another thread. All right. So as I said earlier, this thing might not be clear right now. So this thing will be looking into more detail, after we discuss the concept of threads. Then after that, we have the SQL exception. Okay, so whenever we will be discussing the JDBC, okay, JDBC means Java Database Connectivity. Okay, so whenever we will be discussing that particular concept, okay, whenever you are trying to enter a SQL query, okay, if a connection failed, or some error is there in the SQL query, then it is going to throw SQL exception. Mostly it will be throwing this particular exception when there is an error in the SQL query. Okay, so if there is some other issue, then also it is going to throw this exception. So this particular exception, this represents that there is a problem with the SQL query. Then instantiation exception is, now this again, the same thing is there. This particular exception, this occurs when we are trying to create object using the concept of reflection. Okay, just like I said in the previous slide. So this particular instantiation exception, this is going to occur when you are trying to instantiate or create the object of an abstract class. Now, you already know that we cannot instantiate an abstract class, right? So if you are trying to instantiate an abstract class by using the concept of reflection, then it is going to throw this particular exception. Okay. Then after that we have IO exception. So if you are trying to open or close a non-existent file, that is a file which does not exist in your computer or in your system, then it is going to throw this particular exception. Then after that, okay, so these were all the exceptions which are already defined in the Java programming language. Then after that, we have custom exceptions. So if I talk about custom exceptions, okay, then what are the steps to or what are the ways in which I can create custom exception? Okay, the first way is either I have to inherit from exception class. Okay, that is for checked exceptions, or I can inherit from runtime exception class, that is for unchecked exceptions. Okay, so these are the two ways in which I can create from custom exceptions. Like for example, here I have defined two classes. Okay, so first class name is my exception, and my exception, it is extending from the exception class. Okay, so this particular my exception, it is going to be a checked exception. Checked exception means whenever there is a possibility that that particular code is going to throw this particular exception, then I have to definitely write that particular code in the try catch block. Okay, but however, this your exception, it is not mandatory to write the code which is going to throw this particular exception in a try catch block, because it is extending runtime exception, so it is unchecked exception. All right, so you don't need to write that particular code which is going to throw this particular your exception, okay, in a try catch block. But one thing you need to keep in mind, that if you are sure that the code it is going to throw the your exception, okay, then you definitely need to write it in a try catch block. Okay, whether it is a exception, okay, or it is a runtime exception, because if you don't do that, then the code will terminate earlier. It is going to prematurely terminate. Okay, so then these are the two ways. These are the two statements which you can use, because this class, it is extending from exception, and this exception itself, it is a child class of the throwable class. So you can use this particular statements in order to explicitly throw an exception. Okay, then after that we have a chained exception. So chained exception is nothing but sometimes what happens is that one exception, it can be a cause of another exception. Okay, like for example, let us assume that you have stored a numerator and denominator, the value of a numerator and denominator in a file. All right, and you are not able to open that file, or there is a problem which occurred during opening the particular file, then that is going to cause IO exception, obviously. Okay, but however, it is going to cause arithmetic exception as well, because the numerator and denominator, they will not get proper value, and if the denominator gets the value of 0, then it is going to cause arithmetic exception. Okay, so in this case, what is happening? IO exception, it is causing arithmetic exception, right? So that is what we are calling as chained exception. Okay, so there are two methods in the throwable class. So first of all, we have throwable get cause, and we have throwable init cause. So using get cause, we can see which exception was the cause of the particular. Like for example, if I write arithmetic exception here in this particular case, if I write arithmetic exception dot get cause, okay. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind is that this method, it is an instance method. So first of all, you need to create an object of this method, okay, of this class. Sorry, you need to create an object of this class. Then after that, you need to call this particular method. So let us say AE is the object of this class, okay, and you are calling AE dot get cause. then it is going to show, okay, it is return type is throwable. So then it is going to throw this particular IO exception. It is going to return IO exception. Okay, and if you want to change the exception, okay, which init cost means, like for example here the arithmetic exception was throwing IO exception, right? If you want to change that particular cause to something else, instead of IO exception you want the cause to be something else, then you can write it here. Okay, so obviously these things might not be clear, so these things will be more clear when I use the IDE, so bear with me. Then after that, so this was about the concept of exceptions. So I'm going to just give a brief introduction to the threads. So because the threads, it is a very vast concept, it cannot be covered, okay, right now. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction, just one or two topics. So first of all, what is a thread? Okay, so program, it can have more than one part, okay, with different functionality. Okay, like as I said earlier itself, one part of a program or one thread of the program, okay, we because we call these parts as a threads only. So, one part of the program, it is finding out whether a number is even or odd. And at the same time, other, part of the program or other thread, it is, executing, just trying to, print a Fibonacci series. And another thread is executing at the same time, which is printing out the factorial of a particular number, let us say. Okay, so all, we are writing a single program. Okay, but we are creating multiple threads, and each thread has a different task or a different functionality. Okay, so that is what we are calling as a thread. Okay, so thread is nothing, it is a part of a a single program. Okay, so if a program has more than one thread, then it is called as multi-threaded. So what is multitasking? Okay, so if you're running more than one program simultaneously, then that is known as multitasking. So obviously, you know, more than one program or more than one process simultaneously. That is multitasking. So a lot of operating systems, they are supporting the multitasking feature. Okay, even right now, I am multitasking. Okay, because I am this particular PPT, it is opened in a Chrome browser. At the same time, I have this ID opened at the same time. At the same time, I have this Windows Explorer opened. Okay, so if I open the task manager, you can see that there are a lot of processes opened at the same time. Okay, this cam studio recorder, okay, which is the screen recorder which I'm using, that is also open, that is a separate process. Then this is a separate process, this is a separate process. Okay, then we have background processes as well, like any desk we have. So basically what I'm doing, I am multitasking, right? I have more than one program running at the same time. All right, so right now I am this particular PPT is running in the I am using this PPT to present to you, explain the concept to you. At the same time, the screen recorder is running at the background, and it is recording the screen, and that is how I am able to record the video, right? So this is all multitasking. I am doing more than one task at the same time. So the concept which we discussed in the previous slide, that was process based multitasking. And this thread based multitasking is what we are going to discuss in the Java program. Okay, we are going to write a single program, but that particular single program or that particular single process, it is going to perform more than one task at the same time. As I said earlier, in a single program, you can write a program for printing the factorial. Okay, then one thread, it is going to print out the Fibonacci series. One thread, it is going to find out whether this number is even or odd, and so on and so forth. Okay, there are, you can define as many tasks as you want. Then after that, now this is a very very important concept, states of a thread. Okay, so these are the 5 states of the thread. Okay, first of all we have new, then we have ready, then waiting, running, and terminated. Okay, so these are the 5 states of a thread which you need to remember. So I'm going to the next slide to explain what these states are. So these are the states of a particular thread. So first of all, whenever we are going to create a new thread, okay, it is going to go into the new state. Okay, then after that, whenever I'm creating a new thread, it is going to go to the new state. Then after that, when I start running that particular thread, okay, it is going to go to the ready state. First of all, it will go to the ready state, and as soon as the CPU is ready to execute it, okay, then it will go into the running state. Okay, then after that, it will go into the running state, and from the running state it can go to either dead. Okay, dead means terminated, you can even call this as terminated. So as soon as it reaches its execution, it can go either to terminated state, or it can go to waiting state as well. So what is waiting state is, like one thread, it is waiting for another thread to finish before it can resume its execution. So that is what waiting state is all about. Okay, so these are the various states for a particular thread, and obviously from waiting state also it can directly go to dead state. Okay, like it did not receive its resources or something like that, then it can go to the dead state. So these are the various states of a particular thread. So first of all, we have the new thread. Okay, whenever we are creating a new thread, it is going to go to the new state. Okay, then after that, when we start that particular thread, and as soon as okay, it receives the particular CPU. Okay, if the CPU is ready to execute it, it will go to the running state. Okay, when we start it, it will first of all go to the ready state, but as soon as the CPU, it starts execution, then it will go to the running state. Then after that, from running state, it can either go to dead or waiting. Okay, waiting happens when it is waiting for another thread to finish. But however, if it reaches its if it finishes its execution, then it will go to the dead state. Okay, so these are the various states of a thread, and this is a very important concept. So then after that, we have thread priority. Okay, so every thread, in Java, it has its own priority. Okay, and the range of the priority is from 1 to 10. Okay, so priority is nothing but like when you're trying to schedule execution of a thread. Though okay, like we want one thread to execute before executing some other thread. So that is thread priority. Even though this priority, it is not going to guarantee the scheduling of the particular threads. Okay, but still sometimes it is possible that the program it will execute as expected. And there are three variables which are defined inside the thread class. Okay, and these are not variables, actually these are constants, because you cannot change these values. So first of all, we have min priority. Okay, and the value which is assigned to this particular constant is 1. We have the normal priority. Okay, which is simply the constant is named as normal, and the value assigned to it is 5. Then after that, we have max priority. Okay, so the name of the priority is max underscore priority, and then the value assigned to it is 10. Okay, so if you want to assign a priority, like there is a method in Java which is known as set priority. Okay, thread, the object of the thread, because set priority is instance method. So first of all, we need to create object of that particular thread. Then after that, we are going to use that particular method. Okay, so object of that particular thread t dot set priority. Then you can write min priority inside that, or you can write normal inside that, or max priority inside that. And another thing to you keep in mind is all these three constants. Okay, they are defined in the thread class. Okay, so you need to use thread dot max priority, thread dot normal, or thread dot min priority. All right, because otherwise it is not going to work. Either you okay, when I show you how to create a thread, then I will be discussing more in more detail about this particular concept. So that's all I'm going to talk about in this particular tutorial. If you have any kind of doubts or any kind of questions, then don't forget to post in the comment section below, and I will get back to you when I can. And if you liked this particular tutorial, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. and I will see you in the next tutorial. So till then, bye.